Welcome to Soul Conversations with Sandra The Podcast. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're joining us for this special edition. We are bringing on, and we're going to have a conversation, kind of like a backyard conversation, sitting in a backyard with Queen Casey Starseed. Casey is a mother, a single mother. She is moving through her spirituality journey as a single mother. And we connected on a lot of parts of being a single mother and being having a growth and expansion while raising our kids. So she is, I see her right now. I'm going to join her in. So let's welcome her. Hold on. Let's see. Here we go. Through how to do it. So we're waiting, but we're waiting patiently. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I want you to know this is like if we were both in the backyard with a couple of Long Island iced teas. I don't drink anymore, but I do kind of remember what those taste like. And we're just chilling, right? And the reason I wanted you to be the special guest is because I've had guests that have a company, right? And how they got to where they are and how they utilize their spirituality in the company. But what I wanted to do is, do a more, I think you know what I'm trying to say without saying it, is we both clicked as being single moms, right? And through our journey, we've taken our kids with us.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, talk about that. And the last time we talked, we were laughing because mainly we didn't let our kids see how human we really were and about the mistakes we did. Basically, because of an old story, we don't want our kids to walk in our shoes. So therefore, we're not going to show them our shoes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So where do you want to start?
I don't know.
Well, I will. I know that let's start with the fact that we have, I have two boys and a girl. All right.
So do I.
Okay. I will correct that. I have two adult men and one adult woman because I'm a lot further along than you are, but everything that you've ever said about what you're going through, been there, done that.
Yes.
Right?
And you give the best advice and you have helped me along the way, and then you just like pop up out of nowhere like when I need a little conversation. It's been, yes, we're very connected.
Yeah, I will have to give all the kudos to Source, because Source knows exactly when to wake me up. And there were some mornings where it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and but you being where I was.
Yeah.
Your tears, having those tears and having that anxiety and, trying to figure out, okay, the first thing we do and it isn't as just single mothers, but as an unconditional loving mother, we go, where did I go wrong? Or what didn't I do? Or what could I have said? And our ego is always telling us shoulda, coulda, wouldas, instead of wanting us to be in the now moment and understanding that, so yeah.
And the teaching I've received from you about the awareness, like remembering to be aware, and then it like I'm working on that. That's definitely one of the things that I'm like telling myself is just like, am I aware? And then, or if something happens and then afterwards I'm like, oh, I wasn't really aware in that situation.
Right. Hold on a second. I want to see your eyes, and there's something that's blocking it. And I don't, I'm not going to complain about Instagram, but they've got it just might be my phone.
Are you talking about because the writing is covering my face?
No, it's it's their banner that tells them that they're notifying our followers. And usually it goes away after a few followers come in. It kind of disappears, and it's not, and it decided to position itself right over your eyes.
Is that better?
No, no, don't worry about it. As soon as more people come in, it'll move up. But I'm like, what? But and I want to let you know also, this is my podcast. So my podcast goes out over my my Spotify and my iTunes as well. So
Okay.
just to let you know. So if there's something that's really, really private that you don't want said, don't say it, because then
Oh, we're on Instagram Live. What's private anymore?
yeah. So I remember the first time, well, I think it was about the first time, is you were having a little situation with your older son, and you were not understanding why he didn't understand that he was, that he was, what the problem was, that it wasn't okay to just disappear, right? And believe me, there have been times where my son has after I've gone to sleep, snuck out the house.
Yeah.
Right?
We didn't get to that. It was just not coming home.
It was, yeah. But it was him sneaking out the house to go hang with friends. And, hang with friends, and mainly all they did, except for one time that he got caught. And it was always that one time that he got caught, and it was him doing what was not normal to what they did. And he was writing music. He just loves to, they get together and they sit, in the park, or, in somebody's car, and they write lyrics. And this one time, they had a friend who convinced them to go with them somewhere, right? And this particular person didn't tell them where they were going or what was happening, and they got caught up in something that was not nice. Okay, now, like I said, my kids are in their 40s now, and I still see how I still call them kids, unconditional, right? But
they'll forever be our kids.
Yeah,
our babies.
yeah, pretty much, right? And then when it was happening, I was, basically, we love our kids unconditionally. We do. The thing is, as parents, we have to understand that it's okay for us not to like what they've done. But what they've done, what I learned or realized, that what they have done is not them. Right? At the time you're actually living it.
Yeah.
That doesn't, yeah.
It's not
that's
easy
not
to just say that, hear that, especially in the moments, right? Like afterwards, especially if you have someone like you who's had experience helping me along the way. It's like, okay, they're not them right now. But it's hard when you're in the moment, because you want to like teach them like that they're making these decisions, and how they're acting or how they're treating you, or yeah.
Yeah. Or the same thing. How do I put it? I think the last time we talked, and you said, well, that certainly makes sense, because they're not in the dialogue that's being fed from your egoic mind. Is your egoic mind is saying to you, do not show them who you are. That's giving up.
Yeah.
Right. And ever since people have been having children, or doing the parent thing, is we don't want our kids to walk in our shoes.
Right.
We don't want to know that we sat on the bleachers and we kissed, or underneath the bleachers and we, did other things, right? Or, we don't want them to know that we were fallible.
Yeah. it's funny that like you're saying this too, because even last weekend, was it last weekend I went out for my friend's stag and doe, so it's like she's getting married and stuff. So and then I met her fiance's daughter, and she's only 15, and like we were just like having a great time, and she like her and her older friend like was 19. They just loved me. And then it was like I realized in that moment, I was just like, you know, I don't be myself around my kids, because it's like when you're the mom, you're trying to, you know, like you said, not get them to like not have them walk in those shoes that you walked in, and you want them, you're supposed to guide them, and you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that. But I am realizing that being myself and just being me is probably going to be like when Tegan does come home, if I just start, it's easier said than done though, right? Like it's easier, way easier said than done. It's like I just want to be me. Like if other teenagers can love me, then why can't, you know, my teenagers would too if I wasn't being mom. But then if I'm not being mom, who's being mom? You know what I mean? And then it's just like it's so hard, because like you really do, like you're here, and it's that, I guess it's not cutting the cord, but it kind of is, because it's realizing that they're here and they're going to be making their own decisions, and we can only guide them. But it's that fine line of how do you guide them without being bossy, or you know, telling them this is how you do it. And that's where the tricky part is, and in parenting, and especially at this stage, because my boys are 15 and 13, and then my daughter's 4. It's like, she's hard, but can they just be like 4 forever?
And here's the no, they can. Right. But the thing is, we get all these different, you know. Okay, for me, when I was raising my kids, there was a different set of directives that were being downloaded, if you just want to use that
Well, I
terminology.
feel like in our conversation, like I know I'm younger, but I still feel like my mentality is like how the old school way, and it always was, right? Like, so I hear like, because we've had these conversations, right? So I feel like the way that I thought along the line, like I'm starting to change the way I think now, but I think that I thought the way you thought too. Like, you know, it was 20 years ago or 40 years ago.
I had my mom, you know, when I had my my first son. When I had him, I was staying with my mom because my husband was on the road a lot. So coming up, she kind of guided me to and let's put it this way. My thought then and now is the way my mom raised me was fucking okay, because I believe I'm amazing. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
As
I
far
know.
I become more aware that I'm amazing through all my growth and expansion moments, even though they hurt me, even as being a parent. And she told me once, she said there was a time when she knew when she could spank me or tap my hand. She never moved anything off her living room table. She never made room for you know, she never covered up things. It's just when she told me don't touch, you know, I went to touch the electrical socket, she would tell me don't touch the electrical socket. If I wasn't old enough to understand the reason why, she would just say, because you would hurt yourself. And then when I did, that was kind of like what she said. That was my little kid proof in the pudding, because through the feeling, you know, I would realize, don't put that in there. That was our life learning. And as long as, you know, there were things that she wouldn't have in the way that would like kill me, she wouldn't have that, you know.
Yeah.
Right. But she never moved anything off her coffee tables. She never moved trinkets. When she told us not to run in the house, she told us there was consequences. Either we were going to fall and hurt ourselves, or we were going to break something that meant something to her. She gave
explanations. Yeah.
Right?
It's funny that you say that, because my boys, they didn't destroy things. No, I really had my things. They had their things. They had their toys. We had places for everything. Things were organized. Tier Justice, my daughter, oh, she gets in it. Like, she's 4 and like she just started like coloring on things, or like,
Yeah.
taking markers and like coloring on herself, or maybe it's a girly thing and she wants to be like artistic with herself. She is very artistic, but so is Tegan. So it's just like, it's so funny how like the difference, because it again is like parenting at a different, like the different downloads that you said, right? Like coming in of like how you're supposed to do it. It's different than when I was doing it when my boys were little, like with her.
Yeah, it was different. It was, I'm going to say, with my 2 oldest granddaughters, that it's totally different than my youngest grandkids that are now.
Yeah.
Because the 2 oldest, it was okay to explain boundaries. With my kids, I explained boundaries. When I took them to the grocery store, I explained boundaries and how to let, especially when we were, because I remember this, when we were standing in a grocery store line. And this is how I knew I was doing a good job, is because my youngest son, he was a runabout, and he was fidgety every time we go to the grocery store. Actually, he would hear what I was writing down on the store, and they would always know what coming in the store, because he would always he'd go and he'd rip and run through all the aisles, and he'd walk down the aisles with all these things for me because he's helping me. But he was my youngest, and the people knew me, and they would just escort him back with all the stuff, and he had stuff. If for anybody who's not seeing what I'm doing, I'm doing this, right? But when he got in line, he knew his boundaries as this little 6 or 7-year-old child, right? He bumped into somebody. It was an older gentleman in the line, and he looked at him, and he put his hand on his chest, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry," and stepped back, "Forgive me," right? Because he knew he was in somebody else's space.
Yeah.
But what I taught them was what I was taught by my parents. Nowadays, it's let the kids have all the space. It's not about boundaries. Don't give them boundaries. Don't confine them. Don't do this. Don't tell them no. No is a negative word. So raise your kids without no.
And I did that. I said with Tegan and Romeo, I never said the word no. I was like, I would say it in a different way. Like I would say French, like ne touche pas, or I'd say like other words. With Tier Justice, I definitely say no all the time.
Yeah.
Because I had that in me too. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it this way. I don't want to say these words. Like I never, like with the boys, there was never, oh, this is a boy thing or this is a girl thing. It's like whatever you like. Tier Justice just comes out of the womb saying this is a boy thing and this is a girl thing, and you can't, like, she's such a different child.
I think it's also a different mentality now, right? Where they tell us, okay, don't say no. It's basically when with my younger grandchildren, it's no never comes out of the mouth. Okay, the word not never comes out the mouth. But here's the thing, okay? Let's put it this way, when you unleash your adult children into society is going to say you can't do that. They're going to say no. They're not going to know. They don't know personal space anymore because they can do, be, and say whatever they want to do.
And maybe that's why I'm going through what I'm going through right now with Tegan, now that you're saying it like that. Because,
I mean, it's not a wrong, but here's the thing. No is an answer too.
Mm-hmm.
When my mother used to say, here's the thing, between the ages of 1 and 10, the answer was no. If I'll tell you the difference. From my uncle, the answer was no, and he would say, just if I asked why, because I said so. If I happened to ask my mother why, she wouldn't give me that hands on her hip, like, cut a look that could cut you in two, she would just explain it as best I could understand it. And usually, if she says no, or her words were no, or stop, or don't do that. And her explanation, she gave me the best explanation. I think it was about when I was about 8. And she said, if we are out and about and you are about to get in a dire a dire place, right? Like getting ready to cross the street before she got to the corner, and getting ready to step off because I remember I was about to do it once. I was walking. Usually my mother can tell when I'm a thinker, because when I walk with my head down and I'm thinking. So, I'm walking, and I'm not looking up at the street light, right? I'm just walking, and she says, stop. I didn't, turn around to ask her why, right?
Stop.
Stop means stop.
Yeah.
Because I've done before sometime at home where she had to say stop and explain to me, when you're about to be in danger and I say stop, you don't have time to ask me why. Stop means stop. No matter what you're doing, you don't get to ask me why, right? Or you don't get to ask me why I said no in certain situations. If I say no, no means no. If I say don't means don't. It's an answer.
Yeah.
And she would but she would always give me an explanation. It might not be the explanation that I liked at 8 or 10 or 18, but it was an explanation. But growing up, I had a lot of friends who rebelled against their parents saying no, and just saying, when they got the why, because I told you so, because I'm your parent. Well,
that's what I got.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I got.
Right.
Yeah.
And that answer is very vague. That it could be a plethora of things, right? But if you give them the exact answer that they can understand, it might not be that it's not about what they like or don't like. They're always going to have that perception of what they like and don't like.
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah.
But we were trained as through the downloads into our egoic mind to put kids off. I grew up in I think I told you this. I grew up in a time where children should be seen and not heard.
So did I.
Right.
My parents were yeah, I heard that so many times as a kid. You're not supposed to be, or what did they say? Kids are supposed to be not, or seen and not heard, or heard
right,
and not,
right.
Yeah, or whatever it is.
When adults came into the room, hi Peter, I'm fine, and I believe Casey is fine too. She's got a great her face. Thank you for asking. My mother, when we would have, at the time that I was young or younger, my uncles didn't have kids right then. So it's like when they came over, it's not go play outside with the other kids. It would be, my uncles would say, hey, Anne, and that was her name. Her name was Annie, but they called her Anne. Anne, can you send the kids to the room? It's adults have to talk, right? Because it was that when an adult walked in the room, we got conditioned. Not that my mother wanted it conditioned, right? But conditioned by other adults that were family coming into the household that said, go to your room, the adults have to talk, But my mom would always qualify that. I know your uncle just told you to go to the room. I want you to go to the kitchen. The kitchen is an open area, which means my mom didn't care if she was having a conversation and I was listening on. Why? Because her conversation with us is, you may hear adults talk, but you cannot repeat what you hear. It's not your job, right?
So we were like, for us, we were allowed to be in the room, like always in the room. I heard way too many things that kids should not hear at all. Like I did. So that did come for me, like in my raising my kids is like, if I was having like an adult conversation, I definitely didn't have it around my kids, but we didn't really have a life where adults came over. Like I just was like, for us until now, like I just really, it was just me and my kids. Like we would go visit people, and like sometimes like, you know, I'd have family visit because I've always lived away. Like I never lived, like for 5 years I did live in Nova Scotia near my family, but besides that, like I've always been away. So like the only people probably that would talk like in front of my kids would be like my biological family.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I want to take the thing off. Yeah, there
I
we
like
go.
that we're both wearing purple.
Yeah, I know. It's like it was a purple day today. Hold on. I'm sorry. I forgot to put my water near me. Yeah, so so we ended up hearing a lot of conversation with adults because my mother just never, there was very few times where she sent us to our room so everything could be totally private. But she taught us our boundaries. Our boundaries were, you may be in a room with adults, but you can't go repeat what's in our household out. That's not your territory to talk about, So, but at the same time, with my kids, I learning from my mother as I was raising my kids. It Source wants me to say, I learned how to multitask. I knew when to be a parent and I knew when to be their friend. So when their friends would come over, they loved being there. They would end up calling me mom because whatever I did to my kids, I allowed them in. So if it was, no, you can't go do that because it might be dangerous. Anybody who's bringing their kids or allowing their children to come into my house, that no was for them too. I'm going to protect you at all costs. So I extend in my house boundaries. I'm not going to say, if your parents don't give you any boundaries, that's on them. When you go back home, you go do what you do. But my kids knew that in my home, boundaries mattered. And when you go out into somebody else's homes, your boundaries still matter.
Yeah.
Because the boundaries for me were a respect to everybody else, right? So
that's what I need to figure out as to how to do the balance of, like, because like, this is what I'm realizing. Like, well, you've been part of this journey since September, right? And it's been happening, and now at the point where now he's with his grandpa in BC, like hours and hours and hours away from me. Like,
how's he do?
Days. Like he's doing the same thing. Well, he's not doing the same thing. He's definitely not doing the same thing. But he's not like calling like I want him to be calling, and he's not like, I miss him so much, and I just feel like he's just really enjoying this alone time, right? Which it's good, but at the same time, it's not, I feel like he's not like really learning the things I wanted him to learn while he's there. Like I want him to learn the importance of family and the importance of this. But this is just, again, probably my ego telling me that because he's not like, calling us, like I'm missing him so much. And like when I talk to him, he's like, meh, and like there's no like, I don't know. It's hard. It's so hard. I miss them.
I know because I went through it too. But the thing is, what I finally learned what it was for at least for me, it does not mean it for you or anybody else that's in this room listening to us have this conversation. For me, I realized it was when my son was away, staying with my sister, and I did tell you, my son was a lot younger than yours. My son was about 13.
Mm-hmm.
And he would call to check in, but the conversation was very short, sweet. And it's short meaning, I'm okay, I love you, mom, bye.
Yeah. And like there's that, but it's just like, I just feel like he could have more conversation.
Yeah. But what I found out, that's my ego wanting control. See, I wanted to control him over there, right? in somebody else's household. And I didn't want somebody to do what I couldn't do. I didn't want my sister to help him balance himself, because then it would mean, what kind of mom was I? I couldn't do that. But when I came home, my son had the love for me never went away. It was always there. But the respect for me was, he was realizing that the respect for me was growing, because I had also started a learning process too, which is, I need to let my kids know that I've been there and done some of, if not all of, or if some less than of what they're doing. I needed to let them know I'm real. I really had a life before them.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, right? Like figuring that out, like figuring out how I could be cool with Tegan, so he just wants to like chill with me and not always be like cranky with me. Even Romeo, he's 13 now, and he's getting at that stage too, where he's just like cranky.
Yeah, because they're viewing us as
telling them what to do.
Yeah, they're viewing us like, oh, the Gestapo, right?
Yes, yeah.
You know, back in my day, that's what a lot of the kids in high school, junior high school, and high school called their parents. It's the Gestapo. You know, that they're keeping us from everything, right? Where, you know, like for me with my mom, if I had an embodying question, she would tell me, go out and figure out, you know, especially about churches, you know, you want to go to a Methodist church, go, let me know which one you're going to. And then she would engage in the conversation. What did you learn? Tell me what you learned. But there were other areas, I'm going to say, that my mother was kind of like, okay, you got, you know, well, that's something that I haven't done in my life, so I don't know how to best you know, just talk to me, you know. And sometimes I would, and sometimes I wouldn't. And then when shit went wrong, then I'd go and I ask her, and she would know about the shit going wrong, you know, and still not have an answer to fix it. But it would always be, well, were you, her thing was, were you being an active listener? Were you listening? Were you really listening to that person before you got into whatever situation I was in? That's what I learned is to, when they get to if you're engaging from the time they're young, which when I was staying with my mother, my youngest was growing up, he was always around adults, because my younger sister and younger brother were high school.
Yeah.
Right? So he grew up in that lingo. I mean, he was, by the time he got to kindergarten, he was making full, complete sentences. He was, you know, he was talking as if he was 15. And he was driving the kids, not the students, but the teachers nuts, because he would give full sentences. He would ask why. He would say, they would say, well, how come you did this? And he would say, well, I did this, blah, 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 or, you know, or whatnot. Okay, so the thing was that my sister and brother were engaging with him because there were no boundaries for him. There was never any baby talk. There was never any goo-goo or gaga. There was always do this or don't do this or stop or whatnot. And then when we fast forward to now, my youngest grandkids, none of that is done. It's like, you know, all the, you know, their boundaries are off, and they engage. If they engage, they engage. They don't, you know, there's no boundaries or whatnot. There's, you know, the kids are right on the walls. Oh, it just is. It's like, but wait, when you're into other people's home, they will not have those same boundaries, and you will have people that say, where is that? Like for me, yes, I'm a grandmother. I love my kids. I love them to the infinity and beyond.
Yeah.
But you're going to write on my walls.
Yeah.
You're not going to there's paper for that. There's not start writing on the paper and then look over at the wall and say, "Ooh, I could do something really great on that." There's a boundary, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have those boundaries anymore.
But some kids though, it's not like, I'll say for myself, like, because I don't want my kid writing on the wall, and I am very against her writing on the wall, but she's just something else. Like she's a like, she has this like spirit that is so big that like she, even with boundaries, she's just like she'll look at you like, and like of course when it happens there's consequence and stuff, but she's just so like,
I think as long as you keep giving her the consequence, I mean, as long as she's doing it in your home, it's okay.
It's not okay. It's not okay doing it anywhere. She did it like at the housewarming party. Like we went to Ottawa a couple weekends ago. My friend bought a house in Ottawa, which was like 5-hour drive away. And I have so there's I brought like her little suitcase had her pencil crayons and her, because she loves coloring, right? Like she just loves doing art stuff, and her and the other kids were playing, and then all of a sudden we noticed that her and the little boy, who was like a year 3, had colored on the wall. Like the little boy did more, but still Tier Justice knows better, and she should have been like, no, we can't do this, but nope, she drew a little flower on the wall. We scrubbed it, got rid of it, but yeah.
But all you can do is keep trying.
Yeah.
The thing is, here we go with these words, our spells. It's like the more when we connect with the fact of what we want them to do, or what we'll allow them to do, or what we are attracting for them to do within our interaction, right? With them, eventually they learn. I mean, because when my son, like, I think when he was my oldest son, when he was about in his 30s, we were sitting down having a conversation, and he was saying, "Mom, remember that time when I went to stay with Auntie for a year?" He was going, "I was so ready to come home."
Aww.
Right?
I wonder if Tegan's thinking that.
Yeah. And I went, "Well, why? And he said, her boundaries were were worse than yours, right? There, but right, but there was a comparison of boundaries, and that was the word that he used, and he remembered that at 30 from 13, and he said, "You always explained why you were saying no or don't or stop." And she would say, "Because I said so," right? So, so that made me feel good, because the boundaries were there to protect them at a certain age. And then as they grow from that age, the boundaries shift and change. Sometimes even the boundaries go away. Why? Because they already know what boundaries will keep them safe as an adult. Not keep them caged, but keep them safe.
Yeah.
That
I feel that mine are at this point where they're like, they feel caged.
Yeah.
So they got to figure out that the boundaries are to keep them safe, right? Like,
yeah.
Even something so simple like, okay, so I was explaining to Tegan, because what the result ended up being is he has to do online class, because remember how I was trying to get him in the school out there, but he's not allowed to go because he's not from that state or province or whatever. So, so the result is he's doing online school. So in that, it's called homeschooling, which I'm in charge of making sure he does it. Like, that is my responsibility now, right? So I was like explaining to him, I was like, okay, so I need you to make a plan. Like, you get to do this on your own, but you need a plan. Like, I'm going to do 2 hours on Monday morning. I'm going to do 3 hours, like a plan. And then he was just so resistant to this, because it's me telling him, right? Like, it's me telling him what to do. He's like, well, I just want to do it whenever I want. I'm like, okay, Tegan, you can do it whenever you want, but we need to have, and that was our last conversation, and it turned to, well, you always go to yell. And I'm like, and it's true. I do, like, after explaining it, like, a bunch of times, I do, my tone raises to that mom tone, but it's like, it's so hard because it's like, I still feel like as the mom, I should be able to give them a little bit of like tone, right? To be like, hey, I'm being serious right now, you know? So it's like figuring out how to like teach them, and not like, even with him, he's like, Romeo, like the last couple of days, it's just like, oh well, you're always blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, but if I ask you, just like, I ask and ask and ask and ask and ask, and then it's like my tone has to raise in order for me to be heard, and I don't want that. I don't like that. I don't like getting out of my like zen to get someone to listen, you know? Like, it's not like I want to do that. I don't want to be like, hey, you know, like,
Yeah.
it gets me. And especially now that I'm learning, and you know, like, I'm more aware of what's going on in my body and what triggers me because of my childhood trauma, because there was tons where I didn't recognize all that until like my big part of my journey had started, like when I went through the dark night or whatever what's it called? I always mess it up. The dark night of the soul.
So,
Yeah, when
right.
that started happening, that's when I realized the triggers. That's when I realized now, like, okay, so I can recognize if I'm getting super overwhelmed with everything, like I get like I'm snapping, right? And it's because of my internal stuff that's going on inside me. Like, I can't think of the words, like the um just like that, you know, from trauma, your natural reactions come out because you're wired that way. I know I got to work on the rewiring and everything, but like, you know, if there's, I'm stressed about something, and then TJ's going off, and then Romeo's coming to me and asking me questions, and like he's asking and she's going off, and then I have all these thoughts, and I'm like, ah, you know, because I'm
Right.
overstimulated. Where before I didn't understand that. I didn't know that I was getting overstimulated, and that's why I would be like, you know. So then I'm like, I'm working on the breathing in those moments, and like with my daughter, showing her the breathing too, and because she's something.
Just something. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's a it's a learning it's a learning curve. Although I will say for me, there was always embodiment questions. Okay, I'm not going to say while I've always been on a spiritual journey. I just realized that,
Me too.
and there has always been a embod. Anytime I get to that point where I ask that embodiment question, it means that I've had too many unrelated thoughts in my head. And usually I get super anxious and I have, not only do I get anxious, but I also have an anxiety. I have anxiety plus panic, or I don't have that anymore. I, I don't cast that spell on me anymore, but doesn't mean that I didn't have it. All
Mm-hmm.
of us have some trigger points that get initiated when we're living life. And especially for me, I noticed they would get triggered being a mother, especially being a single mom. You know, because the first thing I would go is my ego would go right to, well, you know, if you were still married to your husband, all of this wouldn't be happening, and blah blah
Or if
blah.
I had some help, then I wouldn't be stressed
Oh,
all the time. Or if I
God.
didn't have to do everything. Yes. And
Yeah.
I know it. And now I know about ego. I am recognizing it's ego, but it's still so hard to 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 not let ego tell you this, right? Like, and I keep hearing things like, okay, so just wake up happy. And it's like, okay, I want to wake up happy. 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 But then when the first thing my daughter does is like scream at me when she wakes up, it's like, it's so hard.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm getting this ego stuff too, like where
Right.
I'm realizing it's ego telling us this. And I'm so grateful for like your teachings, and then like other teachings that just happen to pop up. Like, it's always happening now. Like, I'll be going through something, and then all of a sudden something pops up, like, and then it's relatable, and then it's like, oh, okay,
No,
I can learn from this, or this
that,
is.
that's how I had to do it too. I mean, or that's how it just flowed. And the path isn't easy. Being a single mother is not easy. Okay, not easy for anybody who has gone through and I used to hate this word a whole lot, trauma, because I think people would use it to use trauma to keep tabs on other people from not doing what irritates,
Accountability.
right?
Yeah.
And not taking responsibility for themselves. But since that's the term that's used the most, I go ahead and I use it because for me, that when I was raising my kids, I remember the one thing, singly, while my mom was alive, Sandy, all you have to do is remember when you were growing up and what didn't feel good to you. And I guarantee you, even if it's a different generational time, even if it's 30 years forward, I guarantee the same things that you were uncomfortable with, they are.
Yeah.
Right. But, and she said, so remember this, when you're bringing that feeling forward. Now, see, my mother back then, she wasn't, I don't think she called it spirituality.
Your mom, I just love her. Like, and I don't even know her, but I know her somewhere.
So somewhere she's been around this universe a while, right? So she would just, just remind me of these things when I was dealing with my kids. But still, sometimes I'm going to tell you that ego popped up there. Back then, I didn't know nothing about ego. I just know that when I didn't feel good, I had to take a couple of breaths, and my mother would say, go outside and take in some air, take in some sunshine, and step away from the situation. You step away,
yeah.
right? Because my kids, even no matter how they knew their boundaries and stuff, they had some interesting stuff going on. But they did know when that friend mentality that I had, that fun mentality, sitting and watching movies, having popcorn, taking them to different places, hanging out with their friends, allowing their friends to come over.
We do.
Right.
So I guess I get that friend mentality too, because that I've always done all that. Always been for the kids.
But which I had my adult kids tell me, Mom, we knew exactly when you shifted from friend to mom. They just knew. They could tell friends. I at the right moment, at the right time, my son had a friend over. I think he was 15 going on 16. I'm not sure. It was my youngest son. I think somewhere between 13 going on 14 or 15 going on 16. I can't remember, but his friend came over, and his friend wanted to go somewhere. And my son had asked, and by the look on my face, by the tone in by the tone I had, it was a very, very adamant no, you can't. The reason you can't is it's too late at night, and you're not old enough to be in that area at night by yourself. Okay, so I gave him all the what fors and why not, because it was about me keeping you safe. And if you're there and I'm here, and then you wouldn't be safe. So he knew. So he came back to his room, or he walked back to his room, and he went in his room. A couple of minutes later, I had to go take some laundry I think I remember this so vividly. I think I had to take laundry to my daughter's room or something. And as I was walking up on his room, I could hear his friend say, but we can go anyway, right? We can go anyway. And he said, what? And his friend said, what your mom doesn't know won't hurt you. And my son said, my mom has eyes behind her head. What she does know will hurt me. And I just stood there because he got it. Because even if it wasn't going to be like a spanking, it was whatever I was going to give him in a time. He was too old for timeouts. Yeah. I would literally, put him on punishment. Punishment would mean he'd go to school, come home, and the TV and all his video games and everything would be taken out of his room and put in my room. And don't you dare go in my room to do it. Otherwise, this punishment will last a lot longer, right? And so he just told his friend, nope, my mom has eyes behind her back. What
I love
she
it.
does will hurt me or impair me. And they went to do something, do something else. They had, now it's possible that they had me, they asked if they could go to a movie. I had the little boy call his parents to ask if it was okay, because it was at that time GP, right?
What
And
do you mean
the
GP?
it's general, general audience with parents' consent, right? So I didn't have to go watch the movie, but I did have to present them, show my, you know, tell the theater who was giving the ticket that I was the parents and I get permission.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right.
Moss
And
Moss said soulful combos. Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I always have the most soulful conversations with Sandra. I love them.
so so basically, I mean, I don't think they went anywhere, because when the movie was off, I timed it when the movie was off, they were coming out, of the theater. So, and it was they got to spend the night over, and I remember the next morning, the young man, my son's friend, said, Miss, and of course my name back then was I still had my ex-husband's name. So he said so we'll just say he said Miss Marshall. And he said, I love staying over at your house. I didn't get angry when Marcus told me we can't go here, and gave me the reason. And then you asked my mom. You told my mom where I was going. You picked me up. You made sure I was safe. You made sure that I did everything Marcus did. You included me in that, right? And he just turned around and he says, I love you. Said, will you be my second mom?
Aww.
And I said, yes. But it was my son saying to him, I know my mother, right? Because a lot of kids would turn around and not bitch slap their mother in conversation, that, oh, she's just mean, and she
Yeah.
won't let me do anything.
And like, how do you get that? Like, that's where, like, I feel like maybe I'm just, again, it's ego, and maybe Tegan never ever has said that, like, but that's like where I was at in the end, is just like, no matter what I did or said, he was just angry with me. Like, he just, nothing I could say was gonna get through his head, right? Like, so that's,
Well, yeah, he doesn't understand it yet, and you've got to be. Oh, I know that when both my sons at separate times, when they hit that 16, 17-year-old mark, they had more people in their ear, more of their friends in their ear, um, uh, giving their ego a boost, or mind a boost. So the stuff that was, they still, Tegan will still carry the information of safety from you. He hasn't forgotten that. Right now he's hearing the loudest thing in his spatial reference, and that's his egoic mind. And the friends that have in what do you call it, encoded on that, the thing that encoded on the ego, that says yes. Ooh, that's who. Ooh, I'm getting fed, because it's just about having the, we call it peer pressure, but sometimes it's not just peer pressure, it's just peer information.
yeah.
Right?
Because I don't like blaming it. Like, that's what, like, other people say. And it's like, you know what? He's big enough and smart enough that these decisions he was making, it wasn't peer pressure. It was him, like, yeah, maybe a little, but I still, and maybe if it wasn't like we didn't move here and he didn't choose these friends, it wouldn't have happened. Like, he wouldn't have thought to do it on his own. But I still think he has enough sense to be able to say, no, this is a bad idea. Right. So I can't blame other kids for his actions, even though I would like to meet the other parents and be like, hey, or wherever he was,
Yeah. But the first thing is, we'll go back to what you said before. Maybe if I hadn't moved here, blah, 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 that's your ego saying, see, we're going to put fault on you because, see, you moved here. He had these friends. He made these decisions. But if I hadn't moved here, so the first thing you gotta understand is, don't take his perception of don't tap into a perception of what you think he's having about you.
Yeah. Yes, and that is absolutely, like, I fully receive what you're saying there, because it is something that, like, I'm working on, because I know that there's times even I've said to him, like, and he's like, I don't think that, but so it is ego telling me these things, and I'm working on it. And, like, I think that's why part of this, like, separation with him being in BC is I'm hoping make us stronger, even me be stronger, so that when he comes back, I have better skills, right? Like,
yeah. And the thing is the responsibility of him having an education is on him. It truly is at this age right now. And now it worked for me. I'm not going to tell you it worked. It'll work for you. But with with all my children, when they got into the high school arena, I told them, I said, for my oldest and my middle, my older son and my daughter, who's in the middle, I told them, I said, you graduating high school is you. It's not because I'm going to say I've got 2 kids who graduated high school and feel good, really good, because they're going to go to a prestigious college and blah blah blah. I said, you graduating high school and going to the college that you want to go to, or even if you don't want to go to college, is on you. I, as your mother, provided everything you need as far as buying books and getting you to school and getting you to your classes and your trips and everything I had to do. But when you decide that you don't want to go anymore, that's on you. The thing is, as parents, we believe that our story, or that mask that we put on as mom or dad, is required to force a situation, instead of going, well, you're now living some life, and you're making some, and the choices, you're going to figure out that the choices do have consequences, because you as a child is just as accountable to the law of cause and effect as I am.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard, like, because I know for me, like, it was that way as a kid too. It was all up to me. Like, I got those marks because I got those marks. My mom cared less if I went to, well, the way, maybe she cared, but she didn't make me feel like she cared if I went to school, right? So, like, when we had left my dad when I was 15, and like, because there were 7 of us, I was the oldest of 7 kids, and we left dad, and, like, then we didn't have this, like,
grounding force,
well, abuse. Okay, so we didn't have that fear of him, right? So then when it was just her, it was like, then all of a sudden, only thing that mattered was, like, I had to babysit, or I had to, like, and again, this is my perception. This is nothing against my mom. If she ever did watch this, it's my perception as me when I was a teenager, what I felt like it was more important to do things like watch the kids when she wanted to go do something, or stuff like that. She didn't, like, she would let me sign my name for her stuff, like, she was supposed to sign. So she never, like, I didn't ever feel like she cared. So, like, when I moved out when I was 16, and I was 16, I'm living on my own, I could have been, oh no, I didn't care about school, but I had it in my head that I was going to be different than everyone else, so I was determined. So I guess with me, like, with my kids, there's so many things that I, like, the trauma I went through as a kid, and I can recognize it now, because I never wanted them to feel these things, that I maybe extra did it, like, I was extra about stuff because of fear of them never feeling the way I felt, even with, like, having a boyfriend, like, never having a boyfriend around my kids, that was because I saw so many boyfriends around my mom. and it wasn't me because I had already moved out, is my mom having boyfriends around my siblings, right? So like things like that, like I just had this like these stories, again, dogmas, I guess, like now that I'm learning these things, these stories that we tell ourselves that they can't be this way, instead of just being present, just being in the now. And I'm growing so much to know this now, and not to have like ego telling me, oh, I shouldn't do this, or because now I'm ready. I want a boyfriend. No, I don't want a boyfriend. I want a husband. Like I'm ready to meet someone who wants to be a husband, like, so like little things like that. Like I'm switching it. I'm switching that mindset to be different. Like, with school, all the good marks, it's like, does it really matter? Like all the times I'm like, oh, you should have got a good mark, or you need to study, or you need to do this. Does it really matter? It matters, but the pressure that I put on myself to make sure I care and show the kids I care, it has translated into more of a nagging and more of a, like,
Yeah.
getting in trouble, where it's like, care, like I want you to do well in school, right? But if like Romeo wants to be a kid that doesn't do well in school, then you're right, it's their choices, it's their consequences for their future. He wants to be a basketball player. Well, if you're going to be in the NBA, you need to get yourself a scholarship. This all needs to like full out together. You can't just do crappy in school and then it all goes together.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Like that's where I'm working on being aware and reminding myself the awareness. Am I aware? Am I aware? And it's hard though. It's really hard, Sandra. It's really, really, really hard, because then like I'll snap and then afterwards I'm like, crap, forgot to be aware.
Yeah. I went through that with my granddaughter, with my oldest granddaughter, because we just found out, or she just found out, that she's on the spectrum. And of course, she's going through her moments where she's blaming everybody for the way she feels, why she's having all of this, and her perception of how she grew up. Basically, with my granddaughter, both because myself and my daughter were. My granddaughter were living in the household as a family unit. My granddaughter got, she was everything was taken care of, carte blanche. But see, she sees some of life a different way, and it's okay, because that perception that her ego is showing her is ego is not showing you something that didn't happen. It's giving you a vague and skewed view of what did. Right? It's giving you the messed up version of it. It doesn't mean it didn't actually happen that way. It meant that the person that was viewing the same part of that story saw it from a different lens, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. Everyone has their own perception, right? Like sorry for interrupting. Continue. I was going to go off, Kate, about that, but yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead, because
yeah, so like with the perception, it's like that's something I'm understanding too, is like just because I perceive it this way, it doesn't mean that my kids are thinking it this way, right? Just because I'm cranky that morning does, like so many times when they were younger and I would like snap in the morning, I would like be at work all day long like thinking about the fact that I snapped. Like, and it would be bothering me, it would be hurting me, it would be like all these things like making me feel away. And then I realized by the time we get home, they're just smiling, running to me and hugging me, which my daughter never does, by the way. The boys, until they were like 8 years old, when I picked them up from daycare, they'd run to hug me when I picked them up.
Right.
Okay, what's Becky saying? My mom always gave me love and respect, but it was always up to me to get myself to school and to get the grades I wanted and apply to college. It's hard to give that trust to our kids. Yeah, and Becky was like, she got valedictorian. She was the smartest person in our school. She really was.
It really is, but I'm going to tell you, sometimes you look at parents like that who do that, and then we go, oh, they didn't love us because they didn't take any time with us, they didn't, they didn't push us in this, but they had that vibrational moment. Maybe they weren't aware of it, but they were moving through the vibration. Like for me, my all my kids really excelled. They excelled differently, authentically being themselves. And for me, it wasn't hard looking at my kids and going, oh, I have to do this with my older son. Oh, it would be best this way with my daughter. Not that their view of it was the same as my view. And then with my younger son, I mean, we had a conversation. He just did not like high school. So what I took, his conversation was this. He said, Mom, I don't like high school. There are too many of my friends that, he just looked at it as, I don't like this peer pressure. He liked being around adults. So I took he asked me, he says, what do you think if I went to a adult, the adults that are trying to get their G, what do you think if I go to one of those? And I said, well, all I can say is, let's try it. And he went to the school, he sat with adults, and he got his GED. And it worked. Whereas my older son and my older daughter, they graduated. They had, I won't say they had the highest grade scores anywhere, but they could go to college if they wanted. Yeah. My older son wanted to take a year off before he started college, and then he came back and said, Mom, I want to, because he was a dancer as well. He did ballet, he did tap. He went and he danced. He was a background dancer for a couple of named people who sang. And so he got to go around the world. He said, this is what I want to do. He got to go and see things. And then when he came back, he decided, he says, look, Mom, I want to change. I don't necessarily want to come home, but I still want to dance. And he decided to dance on a cruise ship.
Okay, cool.
And my daughter went to school, and she decided she didn't want to go into the corporate life. She wanted to be a preschool teacher. Oh. So she took her path. It wasn't the path maybe that that we would have wanted, where they went to 4 years of college and then they got that kind of thing. It was kind of sitting back and having a conversation. Not impressing, but actually actively listening. It took me a while to get there as an actual listener, because that mommy
you just want to tell them what to do because you're the mom, right? Like, you just want to tell them. And then, like, it's funny, okay, with the active listening, that is a training that I learned for my mediation. That's what I was saying the other day in the live about the active listening. It was a reminder. And, oh, by the way, I ended up getting the course. So I am one step closer to getting my 100 hours to do family mediation. I did it. So, like, that will be later, like in September, I'll start that. But with the active listening and, oh, now I lost my train of thought. You just made me think, because the active listening. Yeah, like getting that, like I have that training now, right? And I didn't realize before, like I was always a person, all my friends always come to me whenever I work. I was always a person people come to, talk to, tell. But then I realized when I did this training, I was always having an answer for them before they would finish, because of my own life experience, which they come to me and they want that, but that's not active listening. Active listening is fully listening until the end and then discussing it together. So that is something like I'm having a really hard time, like, because it's been 2 years, like, since I graduated. So since I learned these skills, but to translate it into home, like into my home, it's still been really hard for me. It's been hard to, like, not be the, just telling them what to do. So, like, again, like, these are all awareness. And yes, I definitely would marry young. Just side note, if that person's still in here.
Marry young.
Oh, he's not. Never mind.
Marry younger than yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I've dated and lived with guys younger than me. And I'm glad you mentioned that. But before I go there, active listening is listening to them say everything, repeating back certain things so that they know that you're actually listening to you,
Yep.
and then incorporating those things within the conversation that allows them to move themselves to the best answer.
Yeah.
Right. So but this will be okay. So basically what had happened was my decision to date younger than myself was because the younger they were, they wouldn't want to get married. Because I wanted to raise my kids on my own, because I dated a man after I was separated from my ex-husband and finally got a divorce and everything. And the gentleman that I dated and lived with took it upon himself to tell my kids whenever, which is his way was shaming them into doing what he wanted them to do, which is telling them that, oh, you're here with me and your mom because your dad didn't want you, and stuff like that. And
really? Then after that, you were like, never. You were traumatized.
Right. Well, not even traumatized. I was just the Gemini that I was. I was saying, oh, fuck no. Yeah. Right. My kids could come to me and they said, did you know Tony said this, blah, blah, blah. And I went, what? And then I said, wait here. And this conversation, I will say I had behind closed doors, because I still wanted my kids to have respect for adults. Yeah. Still children. And, but I'm quite sure they had their ear to the door. And I gave him what for and why not. He shouldn't do this and why we aren't going to be together. Plus, also, he would have bouts at the end, and I think I told you this, at the end of the month where he would go like a little Looney Tunes. And I believe he thought I was going to be a victim, as he could
serve you. And you're like,
no. It's like, so with those two things, it was out with the old and in with a new thought, which was my ego giving me this thought. But it worked pretty well for a little while, that I would date younger men, younger than me, at least 10 years younger, because most likely they wouldn't want to get married. They wouldn't want to settle down, and they wouldn't want to take any responsibility for raising my kids. And that worked for a long time, because it was great, because they were also individuals who helped my children through stuff, being, they weren't too much older than my kids, but they were old enough that my kids would respect them as, I ended up living with one guy for almost about 3 years, and it was nice. But when he was ready I told him, when you're ready to have a family, to, whatnot, just tell me. We will in the relationship. And I gave him, of course I gave him some parameters. I said, look, try not to date somebody that works where we work, because we work together. And try not to make a secret. Just be open and honest. He broke both of those rules, right? It hurt my feelings, because I will tell you, I had love for him. I won't say I was in love with him, but that hurt me. But that was the catalyst that said, this particular story is no longer good working for my greater good. So change the story. The story is, whoever I'm going to be with next, whether it's a man or a woman, doesn't really matter to me, is going to be, because I am attracting unconditional love by learning to love myself, and by learning to say, I am okay with me. And if I'm happy with me, then somebody else will be attracted to that happiness. I still had to go in and go, okay, well, I created that boundary because I let my ego do that, but it was because I didn't find that didn't find unconditional
Yeah.
love. I knew to give it to my kids.
Yeah.
I knew it, you know
But
what I
not to ourselves. That's where like the journey for me, like even though I always thought like I loved myself, but the last like 2 years is really, really understanding like how to love myself, right? Like
right.
first, and even before the kids, like I got to take care of me. My cup has to be like, you know, full in order to give, right? And if I'm not doing that, that's where I'm at that lowest point where I'm not able to handle things like that. If I was, you know, keeping on filling my cup, then I'd be able to like,
I'm
you know what I'm
saying
saying. Yeah.
to Fifi and Israel. Fifi is saying love with his hands. You know that
Hi,
love.
Fifi. I thought of something else that you were saying, and I remember now. Okay, so when you said you knew um how each kid needed something different, I'm having a hard time. Like I am having a hard time, like again, explaining what I was saying about the kids. Like say Tear Justice is doing something and she's my 4-year-old, and then like Romeo's doing something. I'm having a hard time to be able to like get myself from that one mode to the other mode, because obviously they're at way different stages in their lives, right? So like that it's so tough because there's such an age gap where I didn't think about this. Like I didn't think there would be these kind of things, right? Where because with the boys, for example, the boys never heard me yell, ever, because they were just my little
Right.
boys, right? But because I'm in this, like, I have teenagers and I'm a lot more, it's harder, you know, and I have more stress in my life. That little girl hears me yell all the time. That's probably why she yells all the time. Like, and again, I'm working on it and I'm becoming more aware, but like I find that hard, like to go from, you know, you got two. This is where I recognize the overstimulation now, right? Like when I'm overstimulated, like she wants something, he wants something, he's at me like with his teenage attitude, and then she's at me, but she's the little 4-year-old with an attitude, but her attitude is different. Her attitude is because she's tired or she needs something or this or this or this, where
Right.
his is just being a teenager, right? And then I found that the other day when I thought I was aware and I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, okay, this is where I need to figure this out, because I'm not giving her the same thing that she actually needs. She needs me to be able to, not all the time, but like in this moment, right? Like where she needed me to realize she was tired, where I was like kind of I wasn't treating her like a 14-year-old, but I was in that mode of like how I was, you know, with Romeo, right? So that's where I'm the balance, and how you said like right away you're able to know all 3 kids need something different. So that's what I'm
Yeah, but when I mean right away, it was because I particularly took and I learned this from my mom. It was just a suggestion from my mom. I had a Mikhail, that's my older son, a Mikhail day. It was and I had the assistants where my kids could go and stay with my mom while it was a Mikhail day, or a couple of hours, and actually, you know, have a conversation with them. I mean, when they're kids, all you want them to do is talk.
mm-hmm.
So you could say, you know, I mean, they're like, my son liked, when he was little, he liked watching certain cartoons, and we would start with that, you know, when he was, you know, about, I think I started the get to know them days, like when they were about, I don't know, I think 6 or 7, right?
I, I,
And you
I did that with Tegan and Romeo because I started realizing that I wasn't spending enough alone time. So when we lived in Montreal, we had their grandpa. So I was able to like take Tegan, go do something, take Romeo, go do something. We didn't do
right,
it as much as I'd like, but then then I got pregnant, and then COVID. And then, so now that
yeah,
is definitely a good reminder from Source for me to implement that again, to spend time.
yeah, and
So,
that's what I did, you know, and even as my oldest got old enough to watch, say, you know, that my oldest two were old enough to stay home on their own, I would still have this day for my youngest, you know, and they're all maybe about 2.5, two 2 years to 2.5 years apart from each other, right? And maybe about 4 years from the oldest to the youngest, and they're both boys. So um, I will say what I learned through somebody will say what you learned through your oldest son, now you know how to deal with your youngest son. But for me, that's not true, because they're two individual, authentic people, authentic children, seeing perspective from or life perspective from a different lens, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and this is also when they say stuff that you know, you're as a parent, most parents, I'm not going to say all parents, as most parents, we unconditionally love our children. We don't like the shit that they say, and sometimes we will stop them in mid sentence and correct them based off our view of what they say, not off the perspective of how they're viewing it. You know, kind of like because we want to finish their sentence. Oh, no, you can't even finish that sentence because that's not happening, right? I had to learn a new way of engaging with them. I'm not going to say that it came at the right way or the right time, but it did come. So maybe it won't happen with Tegan, but maybe it'll happen with your younger son. Do you see?
Or maybe when he comes back, I'll have these skills. It'll be different. I hope so.
Yeah, right. And the thing is that even if you're having these moments, these personal, day out, moments with them, just know that everything that has been downloaded into it, just like an onion, they don't know that they're peeling the onion. Matter of fact, you're peeling the onion for them, right? So when you're peeling that onion and you're finding something that triggers you, it's you want to say it's not me, it's them, it's the kids. They're going through their terrible twos, they're going through their terrible teens, they're going through these terrible things, right? But the thing is, if you get triggered, and this is, I had to just go in there. It's like, why does that piss me off so much?
Yeah.
Then I go in and go, oh, I remember when, my uncle did this, or when, my uncles got away with a lot of stuff. Never any abuse, never any, dirty stuff. They weren't that kind of way. They were just being them. They would say, I had an uncle that would say to me, keep your dress down and your panties up. All right. And I don't know, from the time I was, don't know, 8.
That kind of stuff was like, not that sentence, but that kind of stuff was in my life too. So like for me, I sheltered my kids, like in that sense, like of adults that would, be like that.
It's like, don't bring any babies home to your mom, that kind of thing, or whatever it was. And but my mom had this open policy. I could come to her and say, well, so and so said this to me, I don't understand it. The first day, we could talk about this all the time, we're all going on 2 hours, but
me and you could like just say, well, you can talk with anyone, so could I guess, but you and I, like,
yeah. I remember in high school, I think I was in high school, and that's when I went from hanging with my junior high school, and the first year of high school, I went from hanging with my best friend to hanging with some girls who were the popular girls, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think it was about the end of my 10th grade year, this little boy called me for what I thought was no reason at all, was you little bitch, right? And his words hurt. I'd never been called that before, but I went home and I told my mom, and when I cry, I cry. I had crocodile tears. And my mom just sat there. And I remember she had a cigarette in one hand and she had or other, and she was doing this. She put the cigarette out, and then she looked over at me. She said, "Are you a bitch? Or are you one by association?" It was an embodying question. And I had to say, I remember saying to her, huh? And she leaned over again and she said it again. And then I said, are you meaning that I have to like go, I have to look at myself and say who are the people that I'm hanging around with, that he thought he could make that statement? And actually, the girls that I were hanging around with, a lot of people didn't have great
Things to say.
Yeah, because they were me people. They were the ego trying, doing whatever they could do at cost to get seen and heard and
Yeah.
be the popular girls. So whatever happened between this boy and whoever else it was, I think I joined the group. I was the last one to join the group. So he was doing that by association. But my mom, my mom had those sit down, let's talk Sandy moments. Of course my mom sees me come home with the crocodiles. Of course she's gonna want to know what's going on. But my mom was just kind of truthful. Okay, it wasn't, I don't know how to shield you from this, but to ask you two very important questions. Right. Now, once again, I'm telling anybody who's in the room, I don't know if my mom was going through anything like spiritually awakening or anything, because she was still going.
Just was natural, like everything you say, it's just like she had this natural like awareness.
Right, just natural organic awareness. And she pissed a lot of people. No, I won't say she pissed a lot of people off in the Baptist church that we were going to, but she got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, like she seems like she was above her times too. Like everything that you tell me, it's like wow, like ahead of the times. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Like she was from the future.
Right. Kind of, I think she was above the head of the times because she was embracing embodying questions as well. She was about what felt good to her and what fit for her family, because my this would take another couple of hours. I would have to. My mother was a single mother by choice.
Your mom was a single mom too.
Huh?
Your mom was a single mom too.
My mom was a single mother. My mom was betrothed to my stepdad. He went, I think, sometime around the 40s or between I think between 40s. He went to a war, and when he came back broken. I'll just say broken. Yeah. He got hurt or shot in the head. I'm not sure which one. It was never really shared with me, but he came back with a plate in his head. Okay. This is the way they did it then. So when he came back addicted to pain kills. He was alcoholic, and she was betrothed to him, and still, I don't say required to marry him, but she felt, whatever love was pulling them together. She was, he went, she said yes before he left, and she said, okay, let's do this. So in that marriage back then, when the abuse started happening, she went into protective mode for her children. And back then, it was the woman's, women didn't have rights.
No,
then.
not at all. Okay? Like we couldn't even vote then.
Right. Well, we could, but even though we could vote then, we didn't have the right to be ourselves and stand up for ourselves and whatnot. You still had to prove why you can't be with this man anymore. You had to prove the abuse. And you have to remember that all of the courts and the judges and everything were men as well. So when my mom's, before my mom's divorce was finalized, she thought it was finalized, my stepdad came along. You got to understand, back then they traveled in, they swam in the same fucking pool because they were all musical. They were, you know, doing music. They were in, my mom loved music. She sang music. Her whole thing was to come out to California from Alabama to sing.
Okay.
And sing. And back then there was speakeasies and whatnot. So they swam in the same pool, right? So she got together with my father, and then I was the product. But the courts told my stepfather had got himself clean for a little bit, petitioned that the separation be it dissolved, and my mother had to go back to a marriage.
Wait, so your dad, like your biological dad, your mom met in the like music industry, and then she had to go back with your stepdad?
Okay. And then finally she got divorced. But by the time she got divorced, there was me and my baby brother, right? So there's me from my biological dad, brother from his, you know.
The stepdad, the abusive guy.
So I have an older sister, older brother, and then I have a younger sister that has the same dad. And then me and my baby sister, we had the same dad. But here's the thing. My mom decided she didn't want to marry. She didn't want my biological dad to raise another man's children.
Yeah.
So when we grew up, this is my mom. My mom did not say you're half, you know, what they call sister. There
me
was
too.
no.
I'm the only one that's like, not biologically, like, because I have a different father than my younger siblings, but we never called each other half siblings or anything like that.
But she raised us. We were sister and brother. And to think about, when you really think about it, she's the matriarch. It all comes through her anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So for her, she basically taught me that if you're not happy in something, you don't
stay. Yeah. I love your mom.
You know?
Your mom is so cool.
I'm going to say, at the same time, don't get it wrong, don't get it screwed. I was a teenager that had when I married my high school sweetheart. I grew up on movies and downloads that told you especially from churches, marry your high school sweetheart. The man will take care of you. You'll live happily ever after. You'll have 2 point whatever kids, and you'll have a picket fence. Well, 3 years, kind of, you know, okay. I'm going to say okay, not the greatest, but then the bubble was burst, right? So, yeah, I was my own. I think I did what my mom wanted me to do. I did 2 years of college, and then I married my high school sweetheart. You know, not what my mom wanted me to do. My mom wanted me to finish college. She wanted me to become a career or a professional woman before I made the decision to become marry and have kids. She wanted me to have a infinite what do you call it? A universal infinite choice. That there were more choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one for me, there is no like, I don't feel like there was ever what anyone wanted for me. It was what I wanted for me. Like, I just didn't want nothing. I didn't want to be anything like what I grew up in. And I always like had like this different mindset. Like, I just always knew more. It's like I knew, even know what I was living as a child, like that was, even though I didn't see anything different, I knew that wasn't like, I knew one day it would be different. Like, I knew that I wouldn't have to live that life. And then I continued to just like work really, really hard. And, you know, for me, it was like, oh, so important to graduate, okay, to go to university and stuff. I didn't start university until my son was 4 months old, and I knew I was about to become a single mom. And I was like, I need to do something for my kid, right? So then with my understandings of the changes, extents of head injuries your mom could, of essentially having to marry a different version of the man she was Was it too after my brother?
Yes, that was totally, when he came back, he was a different version.
Yeah.
Totally different version.
Um,
But
oh, I lost what I was saying.
For my mom, she was, I don't know whether it was the ego in her, but she was about keeping her word.
Yeah.
And not to say just keeping her word. I'm quite sure she loved both men. She had love for both men. I just knowing my mom, she wouldn't have done it if she didn't love them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So go ahead.
I forget what I was saying.
You were talking about, finishing college while you were.
Okay. So yeah, so then I ended up doing it like, okay, so I started when he was 4 months old, and then I didn't graduate until 2020. Like, it took me that long, and I was headstrong, determined that I was going to do it no matter what. Like, everything you could imagine. We'll have another conversation someday about this, but like everything you can imagine thrown at me, like it, including having like their father being as well, you know what's going on now. He was gone for a very 5 years of our life where I didn't have to deal with that. But like, rewind, I was dealing with that, trying to graduate, trying to like raise kids, trying to be like not realizing I had trauma. So I was like this positive person smiling all the time, where my kids had no idea what was really going on because I never let them see or hear or know any of that. But like, yeah, it took me forever to graduate because I had in my head I had to do it. So like, even though student loans got cut off, all that, like I was like, okay, fine, I'll just do one class at a time because I'm not giving up. So I'm that kind of person too, where like, my word is my word, and when I say I'm going to do something, I continue till I do it. But I am having a hard time. Like, okay, 2020 happened, there was no graduation because it was COVID, so it took me that long to get my undergrad. I didn't, like, it took me 12 years to freaking graduate. 12 years. And then the year I did my mediation program, that was 1 year, and that's when I was also going through my the dark night thing, because that's when I learned about inner child, and then I started like doing that work, and then I had a whole bunch of trauma happening, and like this big, like lots of stuff happened within my own family, and I haven't even talked to my mom since that began, which was like almost 3 years. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So we are at the 2 hour mark, which is okay, because I say Source wanted us to speak our truth. Melissa says it was almost. Oh yes, I read that already. Sorry about that. So I want to. Oh, hold on. We lost her. Let's see. Let's see if she'll come back. There she is. We lost her for a moment.
I went to go like read the comment, and then it went away. And then on top of that, I could see myself there, but you couldn't, like, I couldn't, it was like this much of me, and then it's a black screen. So then I exited out. Sorry about that. What were you saying?
Problem. What I was going to say is I want you to think about this. I have a spot available on the 28th, which is the last Friday of the month. I know you work, so will you be able to do, I don't know, I think that'll be April 29th, which will be a Saturday at the same time, so that we can, I believe a lot of people, especially a lot of mothers, would like to hear more.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll put it in my book.
All right. And I am correct that it is April 29th, right?
It's a Saturday, yeah.
Okay, April 29th. So, yay!
At the same time, 2:30 my time?
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. Right? Okay. And for anyone who wants to be on my podcast, I do have an opening for the 28th. DM me, and as long as we are, as well, no, I'm not putting any constrictions on it. It's whatever you want to talk about your spiritual growth, whether it is moving from religious dogmas, whether it is, it doesn't matter what it is. As long as you do know that we have an open room policy, that it is not anyone's responsibility to take on anybody's belief about what and how they are moving through. Okay, so we are open to that. So there will be no judgment. There will be just observing. Okay, so all I can say is we got to close this room like thief, right?
What is it? 110 or 10845?
Yes, 10845. I allow my energy to go out with wisdom and understanding, touch and heal those who need to be healed from wisdom and understanding, those who need growth. Please take it and utilize it. Anybody's energy that is in here that has wisdom and understanding attached to it, 10845, I hold space for you to take your energy back and create from it. 10845, if you have energy in this room that you no longer want, I hold the space that you give it over and surrender it to the creator that is the creator of that is manifested and that is unmanifested. It will be, it's like a phoenix. It'll be burnt with the fire and renewed and given back to you. And I hold that space for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, Melissa says, it's a judgment-free zone. Nothing but love. Yes.
Absolutely. All the love.
all the unconditional love. It's about the law of one. We are all one. So thank you very much for joining us. And if you want to hear the rest, she will be here on April 29th, 11:30 Pacific Standard Time, 2:30 East Coast Time, or 11:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. All right. So we'll give you the information again. You know, we'll send out all the acknowledgments, but put it in your calendar anyway. Right. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Love you.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.